Symmetry is unbalanced and unrefined. Yet you claim in that there's honor in the crown you take to bed with you each night.
I believe Canada is a country where justice and fairness are important values.
I think it's really unfair that the conditions that First Nations people have to live through every day.
First Nations children are Canadian children and must be treated fairly and equally.
That every child is just as valuable as anyone else, and that no one deserves to be just forgotten in a system that is very old and doesn't really work so well.
Other Canadians need to know that people that are living in Canada don't have the same services that they do.
First Nations people, in the history of Canada, have faced a lot of different inequalities in different ways, throughout history, and now still. Just people talk about the residential schools, those are really sad and terrible, and it's good that we apologize, but an apology doesn't fix it.
Usually most people think Canada is a place where everybody's treated fairly, but then sometimes we forget about our First Nations children.
Aboriginals are growing up and living in situations and places where they don't have the same rights, and this is a black mark on Canada's reputation.
There's not all equal funding for all people in Canada, because they're living in third world conditions like people are in countries in Africa or something.
I want Canada to know that children can change more than just our country, but they can also change the world, and that children can see when there's something wrong and they want to fix it.
Everybody would have access to water and health care and education.
And they should have the right to go to a good school, to have houses, clean water, food, and to have actually a real job when they grow up, and to have a dream and to make it come true when they're older.
I'm sure that they need to have everything what we have, like a warm house, lots of stuff to keep them happy, proud, and healthy.
Un abri, une famille, de l'amour, puis l'éducation, la santé.
I feel that First Nations children should grow up in their community.
As I was growing up, I had an elder who taught me a lot of stuff. My mom was really into that, because she never had it when she was growing up, because her parents were they're all sent to residential schools. My dad's parents too. They're never allowed to come out as who they are.
One of my elders said that it takes a community to raise a child. So everyone's kind of connected and everyone kind of looks out for each other. So we kind of are like a big family sort of thing. We're all extended and we're all looking out for the betterment of each other.
When they're first growing up, they need a good family, a good home, they have to know themselves, who they are as people, especially Aboriginal children. They have to know who they are.
It takes a community to raise a child, not just two people. So if you're taking First Nations children out of their communities, they're cut off from all that, and they don't have those supports and those people that are so important to them and who are going to teach them. Everybody's going to teach that child about who they are and where they're from.
The best place where First Nations children to grow up would be in their families and in the community mostly, because they need a strong foundation and they need to know who they are.
Discrimination is when, because of a certain characteristic like boy or girl, age, or race, is where someone says, oh, you're not good enough for this, or no, you can't have this because you're blah, 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 right? And it makes me feel upset because I think people should be treated equally.
Moi, je trouve que la discrimination, c'est de l'injustice. Je crois qu'il ne devrait même pas avoir un mot pour ça. on ne peut pas avoir de l'injustice dans notre propre pays.
Discrimination to me is when someone gets something that's a right and someone else doesn't get something that is a right. So I find that Canada has a lot of rights and that is very nice, but I wish they would keep up to their rights.
I think discrimination is giving somebody something less than another person based on, gender, age, or, skin color.
Discrimination towards First Nations children, like from the residential schools to like even our child welfare. Like they're not there, it doesn't seem like they're there to help, but just to, take their children away.
I feel there is a lot of discrimination against Indigenous peoples in Canada because our programs and our services don't get as much funding dollars as non-Native organizations.
You just take a look at the statistics and even inside of our jails, the overrepresentation of the children that are inside of the child welfare system is just a sign of the discrimination.
Discrimination is kind of deciding that some people are better than others or some people aren't worth the money. So like not providing First Nations with the same healthcare benefits or school or whatever, that's discrimination because you're basically telling them that they aren't as important as other children in Canada.
This is not a new issue. It is a reoccurring issue that keeps happening to First Nations people across Canada.
And I think it's pretty upsetting.
The reality is in Canada, we are currently facing a crisis. The gap between Canadians and Indigenous peoples with regards to child welfare continues to increase. For Canada, it's not about the real lack of funds. They do have the money. It's about the lack of will and essentially leaving our people in cycles of poverty.
The Micmac family only gets like a portion of the funds that non-Native child welfare organizations get. So they're doing a lot of the services with only a fraction of the funding. So they have a lot of problems with being able to deliver services. Our organizations need to be able to have the same level of funding as non-Native organizations. We need to be more in control of our child welfare organizations. There needs to be more supports for families. We need to have prevention measures in place.
It's systematic, they get thrown into this system and then they start living these lives that are unhealthy or they don't know who they are, they can't find their identity.
Most of the reasons why children go into care are because of poverty, poor housing, and addictions. So poverty and poor housing, we can fix those with funding. They're very easy problems to fix, so we need money to work on those issues in our communities. It takes a community to raise a child, not just two people. So if you're taking First Nations children out of their communities, they're cut off from all that and they don't have those supports and those people that are so important to them and who are going to teach them. Like everybody's going to teach that child about who they are and where they're from.
The best place for First Nations children to grow up is in their community, but they shouldn't have to go somewhere to grow up. They should be able to stay in their community, and in their community they should have a school and proper health care.
And if you don't have that, it's going to be really hard for these children. They're going to feel really disconnected. They're going to have a lot of problems when they get older with self-esteem, with confidence, because they're not going to know who they are and where they're from. Children need to be safe and they need to be in their communities and they need to be around all their family.
If I didn't know who I was living here, I'd feel like lost, like confused. And like I'd feel like I don't have something I should have.
They're just the same as any other person in Canada, and they deserve the same amount of support.
First Nations children aren't getting the same access to health care and education, and they have to sometimes travel far away to get the human rights that all of us enjoy.
Moi, je trouve que les enfants, c'est le futur.
I want Canada to know that children can change more than just our country, but they can also change the world. and that children can see when there's something wrong and they want to fix it.
20 years from now, I'd like to see all First Nations having a better life and not that stereotype to be completely erased from people's memories, and that First Nations people are one of the strongest and most proud parts of Canadian culture.
S'ils prennent une bonne décision, les enfants ils seraient prêts pour l'avenir, puis les enfants sont juste la magie pour la terre, parce que comme j'ai dit, sans les enfants notre terre n'est pas colorée, puis c'est juste les enfants, c'est une partie du monde tellement importante pour avoir.
Oh, I'd like to see everyone on the same level, no one higher than other, no youth higher than other category of youth, everyone everyone just the same.
My dream for First Nations children is to have the equality between non-First Nations and First Nations when it comes to funding and helping them.
If we all had clean water, good healthcare system, good education, that's what I'd like to see.
I wish that Canada would give all children the equal rights to an education, and they would provide everyone with health care in their community so they don't have to travel far away. And I wish that I could proudly say that Canada is a completely equal country and it doesn't discriminate against anyone.